You know, talking about respectful debate and the contest of ideas, there's something I should mention to you, and that is that you hear a lot from me about people demonising Israel, and there is far too much of that going on. But neither should people demonise Muslims when we try and deal with these issues. You hear me talk a lot about Islamist extremism. Islamist extremism, Islamist terrorism is a massive problem for this country, for the entire world, especially for the Middle East, for Europe. We have to combat Islamist extremism. We have to be able to talk about that openly and honestly all the time. But that doesn't mean demonising Muslims. We've got to be very careful about demonising Muslims. And I mention that because you'll see some news coverage about a guest who was on one of our programs last night on this channel. That guest should not have been on this channel. Now, the station's taking measures to make sure that doesn't happen again. But I'm not in the business of denigrating my colleagues. It was just a mistake that was made. But we don't demonise Muslims. In fact, it is Muslims who suffer most at the hands of Islamist extremists, and it's Muslims who are our most important allies in combating Islamist extremism. So I just wanted to mention that tonight before we go on with more on these issues, because, as I said at the top of the program, it's not just Anthony Albanese and Australia who has now recognised a non-existent state of Palestine. The POMs have done the same, along with Canada. Here's Britain's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer.
In the face of the growing horror in the Middle East, we are acting to keep alive the possibility of peace and a two-state solution. That means a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable Palestinian state. At the moment, we have neither. Ordinary people, Israeli and Palestinian, deserve to live in peace.
Same hopeless, misdirected words there from Keir Starmer that we've got from Anthony Albanese. Let's go to the UK now and catch up with Sophie Ellsworth, News Corp Europe correspondent and Sky News contributor. Thanks for joining us again, Sophie. There's politics always in these moves. I would argue that Anthony Albanese has recognised Palestine partly because of that's his long-held political position as a socialist left faction member, but also because he thinks it is politically beneficial for him now. Is there a sense that domestic politics could be driving Keir Starmer as well?
Yeah, great to be with you, Chris. Look, there absolutely is a feeling here on the ground in the UK that this is a decision to try and boost Sir Keir Starmer's popularity here on the ground in Britain. But there's been a lot of discussion this morning in the media that what is this going to achieve, Chris, similar to Australia? What is the result of this going to be? Now, just on the front of the Daily Mail today, it says Hamas claims victory after Starmer hands out a prize for terrorism. These are the sort of front pages we're seeing here in the UK. I love looking at the British front pages every day, Chris, because it often sets the agenda for the day. But there is a lot of concern about what will this achieve. He put this out in a carefully manicured and articulated 6-minute video via social media yesterday. Chris, this was not done in the House of Commons. This was produced and then we knew it was coming and then it dropped yesterday afternoon local time. So there is concern. What does this mean and what will it achieve? And indeed, and it's impossible for Albanese and Keir Starmer and Carney and others to deny that this is rewarding terrorism, because the terrorist organisations themselves are saying, you beauty, you've done this because of October the 7th. They're actually saying it. So it's just shocking to see. But like Australia in many ways, that going back to the broader domestic political scene, you've got a government that's very unpopular and struggling in the polls. But the opposition is not capitalising. The Conservatives, again, in all sorts of disarray, even though the government is on the nose. Tell us what's going on there. Well, they absolutely are, Chris. I mean, the Conservatives here are in free fall in terms of their ratings and popularity. Kemi Badenoch, the opposition leader here for the Conservative Party, is struggling. And there's a story in the UK papers here that there's been a social media account set up, Kemi Countdown, which is counting down to when they can first have a vote for the leadership in November to perhaps topple her. Now, she has really struggled here since taking over in what was a pretty difficult job when the Conservatives lost that election last July in a whopping defeat by the Labor government. She has a tough job, but she doesn't seem to have the cut through. And Nigel Farage is the one that really Labor are concerned about. They're not concerned about the Tory party.
Well, the Tories should be concerned about Nigel Farage too. He seems to be dominating UK politics now in a way that Donald Trump has done across the Atlantic.
Well, it's interesting this morning, Chris, on radio here in London, they're talking about policies that Nigel Farage has on migration. They're saying this is on the front page. This is what Nigel Farage is doing. The Conservatives are not even in the mix here, Chris. This should be extremely concerning for them, particularly with some of their, key figureheads defecting to reform. And I expect to see more of this. So it's really Labor versus reform here in the UK, not Labor versus the Conservatives.
Great analysis on the ground as ever, Sophie. Thanks so much for joining us. Sophie Osworth there live from London.